Hi, my name is Dawn Hendricks, and I'm the Director of Training for the VCU Autism Center for Excellence. Today we have Roseanne with us. Roseanne was recently diagnosed with Asperger syndrome in adulthood, and Roseanne is going to spend some time with us today telling us about her experiences with Asperger syndrome and her perceptions. Roseanne, thank you for being here today. I really appreciate this.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Hendricks.
You can call me Dawn. Please call me Dawn. I'm going to start out with just a question so that our audience or that our participants can get to know you a little bit. Can you start by telling me a little bit about yourself, things that you like to do, things that you enjoy?
Sure. I really enjoy cooking. I really enjoy Spanish, and I like music, and I play the piano.
Oh, lots of things in common. We have several things except for that cooking piece. I'm not such a fan of that, but maybe you could teach me someday.
Sure.
I want to talk about college. Now, I know you have a college degree, so can you tell us a little bit about when you received that and what your major was?
Yeah, actually, I graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Foreign Languages, and my major concentration was Spanish language, and my minor was in French. And I got that back in 1999 from Virginia Commonwealth University.
From VCU. You're a graduate of this university. Okay, good. Now, you said that you majored in Spanish, minored in French. Obviously, language is a strength for you.
Language is my thing. You know how Aspies have a thing that they really enjoy. Well, that's my thing. I've always been really good at foreign language, and I always was really good at it, but I found that I was somewhat poorly advised because when I was in college, we had no idea that I had Asperger syndrome. And, you know, Asperger's was not a known commodity until 1994. I graduated from high school in 1993. Okay. So I went through college not knowing that I had Asperger's, and I feel like I was a little bit poorly advised insofar that Spanish was one of the only things that I was good at, so I went ahead and got my degree in that. But I found out, especially after college, that you can't speak Spanish in a bubble, that Spanish and French and lots of those are very social, which I'm good at speaking the language, I'm good at speaking, but they won't pay you to lock you in a room and speak with someone in most cases. And lots of the careers that involve a foreign language are way, way social, and that tripped me up.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense to me. So while you have this intense interest in language, so you majored in that, so you went to school, majored in Spanish with the minor in French, but as you note, it's very social, and so finding a job has been a challenge for you. Can you tell me, are you currently employed?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Employment has been a really, really big struggle for me, especially, you know, even before college when I was doing some, I call them tighter jobs to tide you over and earn some college money. Even when I was doing some part-time tighter jobs, but after college, really, I mean, when I tried to get a real job with my big bad college degree, then I really struggled.
And can you tell me, what are some of the things that you've looked for? What types of jobs have you looked for?
I've done a little bit of everything. I'm mostly done teaching because obviously, or attempted teaching. That's one of the things that obviously a Spanish or French degree lends itself to. But I find that I really like the younger crew better, and I'm not too big on the high school students. And the fact that just no matter what school you're in, it's really social and political, and I've had a hard time dealing with some of that also.
Okay. Can you expand on that a little bit? So you mentioned your jobs have really focused on education, on teaching. So it sounds like you have this tremendous command over the language piece. So you're an excellent teacher because you know the language so well, you know the content so well. However, the social piece has been the challenge for you with work. Is that correct?
Right. Like getting along with mostly the boss and coworkers, understanding what, you know, they're looking for me to do. Sometimes that's been a hard thing for me. I usually, you know, like you said, I have a good command of my subject. I know what I'm doing. Most of the time the kids like me, but I have a hard time with, you know, the social piece of it.
Okay.
And I have to emphasize it, it's not just teaching, it's most of the jobs that I've been in, it's not that I don't have the ability to do the job, because I definitely do. You look at my resume and you're like, wow, she's qualified to do this, but, you know, and people really want the Spanish skills. They like they like the fact that I'm bilingual and so forth. I think I come across reasonably well to most people most of the time, but I struggle with the social piece. I struggle with the I just really struggle with the social skills,
Okay.
and that's.
Is there one particular social skill that you could tell our audience that is really challenging for you? For example, I know some individuals with Asperger syndrome who may have a hard time talking about different topics. I know some individuals with Asperger's who may have a hard time with nonverbal. Obviously, you have tremendous eye contact. We've chatted a couple of times by phone and in person. You have great social skills from the conversational standpoint. You're able to talk about a lot of different topics. Is there any one thing that you find really challenging?
Sometimes I don't even know where I go wrong with people, and that's frustrating. But I've been told by some of the people that I've tried to get to help me with this, I've been told that, and I've tried to work on the fact that I don't deal real well with nonverbals. Sometimes I won't know when to end a conversation or when to leave, and stuff like that. And as a result, people tend to kind of ignore me or shy away from me. And especially when I was younger, I would see that as, oh, well, I need to try harder, and I'd go after the person harder.
Okay. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So not understanding those cues of when a conversation is ending, when they're saying goodbye or when they're walking away from you, or
But
trying to
wait,
subtly
come back,
end a
come back
conversation.
here.
Right. Yeah. Okay, good. And I'll say that I've experienced a little bit of that with you, and we talked about that the other day in the coffee shop as we were leaving, that we were talking about a couple of different things, and those nonverbal cues were not picked up on, and we were talking about that. So I've seen that. Okay, so that's a great example of how perhaps those social skills have been a challenge for you in the workplace, how that would transfer to the workplace. Okay.
I mean, it's something that I'm working on, but it's not easy for me, and I pretty much stay frustrated.
Right, and what I heard you say a second ago is you don't always know what it is that you're doing incorrectly or what might be bothersome to others.
And I think that's one of the tricky aspects of Asperger's also, is that for the NT person, for the other person on the receiving end, it's not polite to correct somebody and say, you were just really rude, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And some people have a really hard time correcting someone else's social behavior.
Right, right. And I want to talk about that for a second. When you and I were chatting the other day, you told me, these are your words, I have performance gaps and deficits. And I found that such a profound statement. And one of the things you were talking about is this intensity or these strengths that you have, but then they're overshadowed. Can you talk about this phrase that you use, performance gaps and deficits?
I think that most, people with special needs in general have some kind of gaps. I mean, that's what gets them diagnosed. But, I mean, I think, first of all, I don't test well. I don't take standardized tests. I don't score very well at all. Also, just I have strong strengths, but they're often overshadowed by my weaker social skills. And so I may not get a chance to really show people what I'm capable of doing.
Okay, okay. And I think that our society is so social that I could see that being true, that they don't get a chance to really get to know you and see those strengths because they see that social piece first and don't give you the opportunity.
Yeah, and that's very frustrating for me. I've seen that over and over, and it also frustrates me when, NT people make the mistake of mistaking the manifestations of these hidden disabilities that I have. I mean, I come across pretty well most of the time to most people. You wouldn't know unless I told you that I have Asperger's. Mm-hmm. Unless you're like an expert at it and you really know what you're looking for. Right.
And I think that's a really important point. I think that's a really important point from the perspective of, we often call Asperger's a hidden disability. Again, you're very articulate, you're very well put together, you're well spoken, you're well educated, all of these tremendous strengths, but yet you require supports in some really critical areas.
Right.
Okay. All right, so that makes sense to me. Again, you use that phrase, performance gaps and deficits. And I do want to help our participants understand, you keep using the initials NT NT refers to neurotypicals, which some individuals call people who do not have an autism spectrum disorder neurotypicals,
Right.
meaning that they're neurologically typical. So I just want to help the audience to understand that. All right, I'm going to jump back for a few minutes, and what I want to do is I want to talk about your diagnosis. You mentioned a few minutes ago that you were not diagnosed in college. So when did you receive your diagnosis? How did that occur?
Well, I've only known for about 3 years. I was diagnosed in March of 2008. I was about a month shy of my 33rd birthday. So I always knew that I was different. I always knew that there was something wrong, but I never knew exactly what it was. And I knew in college, I never knew in high school, but I knew in college I learned that I had a learning disability. And then in 2005, I found out that I had ADHD. But even after those two diagnoses, I was like, there's still something wrong going on. I'm still not keeping jobs. Obviously, something's missing here. And it was around that time, between 2005 and 2008, that I found out about Asperger's. And I started reading as much as I could get my hands on about it.
You found out about it on your own then?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Keep going. I'm sorry.
I found out about it on my own and once I found out about it, I was like, wow, this makes a lot of sense for me. This is clicking. This is, this explains a lot of things that have happened in my life as far back as I can remember. So
what are some of those things? Can you remember? What are some of the things that you read that you thought, this sounds like me?
Autism, Asperger's, people have like a connection to strange things, or they'll line things up and things like that. My mom used to get so angry with me because I would take her trashy romance novels and she thought I was reading them. I wasn't reading them. I had a preoccupation with beauty contests when I was a kid.
Okay.
I would take these trashy romance novels and I assumed, and this is something that I assumed as a little Aspie, 6 years old, I assumed that the lady's name that was the author on the cover, I assumed that was her picture underneath. It's usually not. It usually has something to do with the book, which I was not reading the book at all, even though I probably could have. I was an early reader. I read at 4. I loved sitting in front of Mr. Rogers and the Electric Company and Sesame Street. I read early. I had a tremendous vocabulary. I was articulate even as a little kid. I probably could have read the book. My mom's glad I didn't, but she always assumed that I did. And she would get mad at me. She would get these things for 50 cents at a yard sale. I would go through these yard sale bags of these Harlequin romance novels that she would buy, and I would line these suckers up in a certain order on the bed and have these beauty contests. Well, the winner is Mary Higgins Clark, and I'd be like, my mom got upset when I would do that, but now I realize that things like that, just really, really Aspie.
Okay, so some of the behavioral pieces, so intense interests and things of that nature, lining things up. You talked about your experiences when you were younger, lining things up, having a preoccupation with beauty contests. And you mentioned at the start of this interview that your interests now relate more to language. Spanish, French, and so on. Is that correct?
Oh, I've always been interested in that also. I remember I had a 3rd grade teacher who really did a lot of Spanish and stuff with us, and I just remember always being really interested in stuff like that. My parents every year would take us to the International Food Festival when it was down at the Richmond Coliseum. That thing used to be huge. It would fill up the whole Coliseum and eat food from all over the world. So I was always interested in foreign cultures and things like that, and I was always interested in language and poetry. I was really obsessed with poetry when I was a kid. I would read poetry books, read the dictionary, things like that.
So not many young children I know sit down and read the dictionary.
No.
So that's interesting. And I think one of the things that strikes me also is your interest in language and poetry because we think of Asperger syndrome as being a language-based disability. It's a social and language-based disability. So I think that's a very interesting point you make, that this is a real strength for you. But when it comes to that social piece of using that language and that communication, that's where the breakdown is.
I think I've been lucky. I think it's a double-edged sword being so high-functioning, first of all. I think in many ways, because I'm so high-functioning, I am at a disadvantage a lot of times. People assume that, oh, well, she has a college degree, she can do that. Or, you know, they assume certain things. Sometimes I don't know what they're assuming, but I'm like, okay. I don't know. I get real frustrated and confused about it a lot. I mean, I just know that I'm really lucky because I was always lucky that I understood, you know, the language. I understood what people were saying to me most of the time. And I think part of that was because they say that, you know, with Asperger's, you either define the trait or you defy it. And I think I see little bits of both with me. I mean, most Aspies are really, really good at math. Well, I got thrown a curveball. I have a learning disability in math.
Okay.
So that threw me off.
And so by that, you're saying you defy the trait. So just to stress, you define it, meaning you fit the criteria of Asperger's, or you completely defy it, meaning you go in a different direction. Okay.
And I found that to be true with me, too, that either you're really true to the criteria or maybe... But everybody is different. And
right,
I mean,
and it speaks to that heterogeneity of this disability, of how very different everyone is.
Right. And I think it's important for people to know I'm a person first, you know. So.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed getting to know you through this whole experience very much. So I'm going to take us back to the diagnosis. You had mentioned that you discovered Asperger syndrome on your own, through your own readings. And I want you to take it from there. So you start reading about Asperger syndrome, you start thinking, gosh, this is a match. This might describe me. What happened from there?
Well, I was working with DRS because the Department of Rehabilitative Services, I was working with them thinking, okay, they can help me with my
employment.
And well, I knew that I had ADHD and a learning disability.
Okay.
And I was, you know, hoping that I could get services through them. Well, I got on their caseload after a long wait, and I started working with a DRS counselor, and my original plan was to go back and get my teaching certification, which I had let lapse. And so in order to send me back to school, they were going to basically redo my learning disability paperwork, whatever you call it, that says, okay, this person has a learning problem, they need accommodations in college. So they were redoing that psychosocial evaluation, and I mentioned to the psychologist that was doing the testing, I said, is there any chance that I could have Asperger's syndrome? Well, when the report came back, it just reeked of Asperger's. And he said, let me tell you, sweetheart, that's your primary problem. And I was like, yes, we finally have some answers here.
Okay, so you say yes, like with enthusiasm. So tell me about that experience. You're an adult. You have testing done thinking learning disability, ADHD, and it comes back with a diagnosis of Asperger's syndrome, but you're relieved.
I kind of, like I said, I always knew that I was different. I always knew I had a problem. I had found this answer on my own, and then when somebody was able to corroborate that and say, yes, this is what you have, it was, you know, a huge weight off my shoulders.
Okay.
I finally knew what I'm dealing with now, so I think it's a lot easier if you know what you're dealing with, rather than, you know, like trying to go in the dark.
Right, right. And that makes a lot of sense. Now, with that diagnosis, tell me a little bit about your parents and their knowledge of the diagnosis, ability to accept it, and so on.
Well, obviously, like we've established, I didn't find out until I was, you know, I didn't find out until 2008. My mother passed away in 2001, so she never knew. My dad has not been really accepting, but my parents, in general, I don't think they would have been really accepting. I mean, they knew that I was different. They knew that I had problems. They knew that but they just, I don't know what they attributed it to. I was never diagnosed with, I was never in special ed when I was in school. I was never, I was never diagnosed with anything like that till I got to college.
Okay.
But I obviously had the problem before. It just, I was so articulate and so forth and always so smart that I guess I flew under the radar of a lot of people. I know that there were some teachers and coaches and so forth that expressed some concern to my parents about my social skills and so forth, but my parents were just like, oh, okay, whatever, she's quirky. And my problems were not bad enough, and I was high functioning enough that I guess it was kind of swept under the rug kind of thing.
Right. And I think that could be attributed to a lot of things. You mentioned earlier we really didn't know much about Asperger syndrome until the last decade or so.
It wasn't a known commodity when I was growing up. So from that standpoint, I'm at a disadvantage.
Right, absolutely. And then the piece of social. Right now in our educational systems, we're starting to more and more recognize that social skills are a part of our educational process and should be included with goals and objectives, and we need to target these skills. You obviously didn't have that because, number one, it wasn't identified. Number two, it may not have been the priority. And as you said, number three, it may not have been bad enough.
Right.
At the time, at least, to warrant some sort of intervention. But let's talk about that a little bit. What was your school experience like, your middle school, high school experience like?
I mean, I think I had a relatively good experience in school. I always enjoyed school. My parents always were very involved in our education, and I love my parents, and they were very strict, and I think that was good for me. Looking back, I realized that because they were so strict and old-fashioned and everything, that they put a lot of emphasis on, structure and routines. And my mom was a very large and in charge kind of person. She really definitely wore the pants in the family, and she was like, when I say jump, you say yes, ma'am, how high on the way up. And so even though that was difficult at times to deal with, I still think I benefited from that, because I think Aspie kids definitely need a lot of predictable structure. And also, the way that schools were back when I was coming through, they provided that also. You get a lot of structure in middle and high school, especially when I was coming through. I'm grateful that I wasn't coming through now, because I don't think I would have done nearly as well with block scheduling and SOL testing.
Okay.
I don't think I would have. But perhaps they would have flagged my disability quicker. So it's hard to say, you never know.
Right.
But you can't go back and change the past. I came through when I came through, and,
Well, and it sounds like there are pros and cons to that, as you said, with different structure in place, which you benefited from.
I definitely did. I mean, but when I got to college, of course, I didn't have the structure. My first year, I went away. I didn't come to VCU to start with. I actually went to a couple other schools and then transferred in and finished up at VCU. But my first year, I went away to a state school, and I was living in the dorm there, and just not having my mom around for structure and support and so forth, it was a difficult experience for me, and I definitely just had a real rough time under the pressure.
Okay.
So not having the structure, I kind of fell apart, so.
Okay. So, which resulted in you returning here to your hometown or your home area and finishing college. Can you tell me, let's go on down the path of college. So as you went through school, as you had this major and minor, tell me a little bit about any sort of supports or accommodations you may have received.
In college? Well, like I said, I didn't know really that I had Asperger's, obviously, in college. I knew I had the learning disability. I didn't even know that I had ADHD, but I suspected it. But I wasn't on any medication. I wasn't receiving a whole lot of help. When I came here to VCU, I tried to get accommodations, and they told me in the disability office that I didn't have the right documentation that they required, and so they wouldn't give them to me. And I looked the lady in the eye and I advocated for myself. I'm like, are you crazy? Yeah, I've gotten this at other state schools. I don't understand why you won't give it to me. And she was like, well, I'm sorry, I have to go by these rules, and you don't have the documentation that we're looking for. You can get it, but it's going to, you're going to have to go see Dr. Doodad over here and get tested, and it's going to be like, $900. And I'm like, okay, I don't have the money. And, I didn't feel like my parents were very supportive and so forth. And that was a major problem, that I didn't feel like I could really go to my parents. I tried, but I had a lot of tension with my parents because of a lot of the miscommunication and just misunderstandings because of the Asperger's. I mean, I clearly see that looking back, but I didn't see it before. But I see that there's a lot of misunderstandings and miscommunication because maybe I wasn't perceiving things the way that my parents were, and vice versa.
Okay. So when we were speaking the other day, you had mentioned, however, receiving some accommodations here at VCU. Can you tell me about how that transpired?
I did receive a few, but that was because I actually just went to the professor on my own, and I said, look, I have this problem. I'm going to, it would really help me to be successful in your class if I could take this test privately in your office, or if I could have a note taker for this class or whatever. There were a few things like that I would ask for from time to time. I didn't ask for it in all of my classes, but like I remember a science class I asked for that in. And the professor was actually surprisingly accommodating, and she agreed with me that the lady in the disability office was difficult to deal with, and that this is not the first time that she'd heard that. And so she was very accommodating and gave me what I was asking for, which I don't think was that much. And but I did advocate for myself. And back before I really understood what advocating for myself really was, I've always been one of these people that is not afraid to, to speak up for myself and to go after what I want. Sometimes that kind of backfires on me because I am very singularly focused and I go about it really hard charging or go about it the wrong way. And like I said, over the years, my things have been blamed on different things. I mean, my parents just always assumed I was a weird, quirky kid who had a really strong personality and offended people. Well, they blamed it on, bad personality or laziness or, it frustrates me, like I was alluding to earlier, that people mistake the manifestations of Asperger's, which is a hidden disability. They mistake it for, I've been told any and all of the, willful disobedience. My parents told me that quit being so willful, or that I don't care, that I'm not listening. I got told that a lot when I was in elementary and middle school, that I'm, you have some kind of, personal flaw, or you're mean, or you have a bad attitude, or whatever. And that's not the case at all. I don't set out to say, guess what? I'm going to have a bad attitude and I'm going to lose my job today. I don't think most people set out and say, guess what? I'm going to get everybody to tell me that I have a mental illness and that, I'm a mean person who is rude,
Or I'm not going to deliberately listen to you.
Exactly.
Which is...
Obviously, I'm trying to be successful, but once again, that sometimes I don't quite know how to get there or what I'm supposed to do, and I have to be told things very directly, more directly than most people, and it's very frustrating. Once again, being so high functioning is totally a blessing and a curse. I mean, obviously I want to be successful, but, like I said, sometimes I don't know how to go about that.
Well, I'm going to go back to then the accommodations and modifications that you received. So one of the things I find so impressive about you, Roseanne, is that that self-advocating. So I want to stress that when you were in college, it was a number of years ago, So the players have changed here at VCU. A lot has changed about knowing about disabilities and supports for college. We also know a lot more about Asperger syndrome. So again, there's the pros and cons for when you went through college.
Oh, I came through way ahead of my time.
Yeah, and so I'm sure that there would be a vastly different experience for you now, or a somewhat different experience for you now. But one of the things I find so impressive is that you were aware of some of the assistance that you needed at the time to get yourself through college. So some of the things that you mentioned: private testing, so testing in a nice quiet place, note-taking.
Yeah, because I was really easily distracted.
Okay. Okay. Can you think of anything else that was helpful for you during your college experience?
Priority registration was a lifesaver.
Okay, priority registration. Okay, why is that? Why was it a lifesaver?
Because that way I could make sure that I got into the classes that I needed.
Okay. Okay, so that was another helpful piece. Okay. Anything else you can think of?
Not really.
Okay.
If I think of anything, I'll tell you.
Okay. Well, one of the things I wrote down that you just mentioned is being told something directly. So I would imagine that as you talked about your job struggles and some of the issues with coworkers and supervisors that you may have, that piece may impact you. Is that fair to say?
Oh, yeah. Most definitely. I mean, I think that people don't realize sometimes how directly you have to speak to somebody who has Asperger's. I mean, if you don't, they may totally miss the message. I mean, and you can't be. I remember one time my mother heard about a teacher that played favorites. Do you want me to tell the story?
Mm-hmm.
I heard my mom had heard about this this middle school teacher that played favorites, and she said, "You need to keep a low profile in Mrs. So-and-so's class." And I really didn't understand what she meant by that. She said, "You just need to behave in her class." Well, she didn't really define what she meant by behave. And, you know, I got out of my seat all the time and asked a lot of questions and was my typical annoying self. And this was bothersome to the teacher, who dealt with students who were very, "Yes, ma'am," in their seat, you know, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And she wanted a certain type of student, and she was very into the social thing, and I was missing a lot of those social cues, and as a result, I was not one of her favorite students, even though I would have liked to have been.
And if you had been told more directly what the word behave meant, you probably could have been more successful in that situation.
Probably, yeah.
Okay. Okay, good.
But you just can't use a lot of generalities. You know, I once had I get frustrated when I try to nail people down and they don't answer my questions, too. I once had a boss who said, "Well, you just don't listen." I'm like, "Well, can you please explain to me what you want me to listen to or what I'm not listening to? You just don't listen. Just do your job." Just like, okay. And I would try to ask her more questions, and then she'd just get frustrated with me.
Mm-hmm.
"Whatever, you're fired." I'm like, okay, whatever.
Okay.
I've never heard that before.
So speaking of employment, tell me what sort of modifications or accommodations or supports that you have found helpful for you with a job.
Well, I mean, my diagnosis of Asperger's is still relatively new, so I'm still working on figuring out which types of accommodations and supports on the job might be best for me.
So some of the things that we had talked about is looking at, with education, there's obviously a huge social component. So maybe a job that's not quite as social as something like education. What about anything regarding schedules or routines? Does that help you at all?
Yes, definitely that helps. It definitely helps me to have a schedule or routine, but I don't like it to be too strict. I've worked for places where they'll be like, "Well, you must take your bathroom break at exactly 10:32, and if you don't, then you're going to be holding it for the rest of the day." So, but that kind of thing, if I'm on a phone call or something, and I'm looking at my watch going 10:32, but I get frustrated because I don't want to be rude to the person on the phone and be like, look, I got to pee. I have to let you go, you know. You don't want to be like that. But so I don't like it to be too strict.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some bosses, if they hear that you need, I mean, they just nail you down. And I don't like to be too nailed down, but I also need some structure in place. They can't just, you know, give me the job and say, do this.
Okay.
It helps me to have some visual reminders. I remember one job I had, and I had been dealing with more familiar things in Spanish, and in Spanish they have two different registers. You can either, two people, you can be familiar and use a to form, which is like what you'd use with friends. Well, I was dealing with college students, and so I was used to saying to all the time, and just chatting with college students. And I switched from that to a job where I was working with people over the phone, and I was having to be very more formal with them. So I remember I did this for myself even before I knew that I had Asperger's. I put up this big sign next to my phone that said usted, so that I would remember that I had to use the polite form with the people when I was talking to them.
So on the job, talking about visual supports have been very helpful for you. One of the things you mentioned earlier, and I want to iterate again, is being spoken to very directly, because we find in the workplace that very often instructions, projects, whatever it might be, is very vague. That there's a lot of interpretation given by bosses and by supervisors. So you've mentioned that being a struggle. I want to ask you, have you ever received additional services such as a job coach or an employment specialist to assist you?
Well, I have to emphasize again that I've had to really pull teeth and advocate for myself in order to get a lot of those services. And yes, I have worked with I am actually right now working with a job coach.
And it's my understanding that's pretty new. That's a new service for you, right?
I've only been doing it for about a year.
Okay.
Right now, they're kind of in a holding pattern. They've frozen the money at DRS, which is who pays for the job coach. And so nobody that I know is getting many hours.
Okay, so DRS has been hit by the economy, as has many other service providers.
Lots of service providers have had their funding drastically cut. And so many people, particularly, I'm still in what they call the job development phase, which is the first phase of actually finding a job. And everybody who is in that job development phase, no funding right now. So I'm not getting any hours or any services at this time. In general, I haven't found it to be very helpful to me so far. I'm hoping that will change. I find I have a lot of philosophical disagreements with the job coach, and a lot of problems that result from my being so high functioning. There are no protocols to deal with people that are high functioning like myself. So we kind of get grouped in the same group as maybe someone who's really low functioning, or someone who, has a lot of intellectual disabilities. They're trying to kind of lump us all in the same group.
So it speaks to how disabilities are very different, people are very different, and so the services that we provide have to be very different. Whether we're talking about school, jobs, whatever it might be, you require different types of support, and you've made pretty clear through this interview, those supports really are very social in nature.
Right.
It's not about getting the job
sometimes than somebody who needs to be reminded to, how to make a phone call. No, I don't need that reminder. I may need a cue card to, remember to be polite to the customer or something like that, but I'm not going to need reminders all day long. Hey, remember to do this. Hey, remember to do this. That's going to annoy me. But I may need, something that, I don't know. I mean, it's still something I'm working on, how to be the most successful. So.
Okay. So I think your point of with employment specialists, with job coaches, the protocol for Asperger syndrome, I can pull in a little bit from the research in this area. The protocol really doesn't exist at this point, and it's being created as we go along. As you mentioned earlier, Asperger syndrome is still fairly new to us, and understanding the right services, supports, all types of delivery options is still something we're trying to figure out, and you're basically caught in the crossfires of that.
Well, I know that I'm going to need some supports, but I don't think I could get away with not requiring any supports, but I'm not going to need really strong, intensive, I don't need a babysitter. And I resent when people try to hover over me like I don't know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. So right now with a job coach, you're trying to figure out exactly what it is that person can do for you to help you to gain and maintain employment. And so you're figuring this out together, it sounds like.
Trying to. One of the arguments that I have with my job coach is that she thinks that she has to go in and say, basically, this person has a disability, you have to accept them. And when the person says, well, what's their problem, which technically they aren't even supposed to ask what the person's disability is, let's say that they do. They say, oh, well, what's her problem? And, oh, well, we can't really tell you that information.
So the issue of disclosing your disability is a big area of discussion, maybe even contention.
It is.
Of do you disclose it to an employer up front, or do you go in an interview without disclosing your disability?
She thinks I ought to go in and, go in with her beside me. I don't need that. I can do that for myself. And I vehemently and strongly disagree that, I'm smart enough to know that you don't start a conversation with, hi, I'm Roseanne, I'm autistic. Hello? Are they going to give you a job with that? I don't think so.
Okay. Well, that's an interesting point, because it is one of those issues of do you disclose that or do you not, and how does that impact your employment and the type of employment you may receive?
I think you have to approach it depending on what kind of job you're applying for. I think it just depends,
Mm-hmm. And I think you're right. I think it probably does depend, and certainly your opinion is the most valuable opinion here, or when it comes to you getting a job, on your comfort level and your desire to disclose the disability. That becomes a very personal decision for anyone who has a disability.
I'm going to disclose, but I think that disclosing before a job offer is made is generally a mistake.
Okay, and so that's how you would like to approach it. Okay.
But there's not a whole lot out there. I mean, I don't know what the right answer is. Obviously, I don't have a job yet.
Okay. All right. Well, I would like to go ahead and ask you one more question, if that's okay. And I would like to ask you, you are a person with Asperger syndrome. You are speaking to potentially hundreds of people throughout the state of Virginia. What would you like for them to know about Asperger syndrome?
I want them to know that I'm a person first, that, please get to know me. Don't just, cast me aside. Let me have an opportunity, because I have a lot to offer. Also, like we said earlier, I want people to know that I'm not intentionally being rude. I want people to know that, this is a legitimate problem, that it's not just, laziness or rudeness or whatever.
Okay. All right. Well, Roseanne, thank you so much for your time today. This has been eye-opening and a great experience to get to know you.
Thank you.